And that argument that you made also involved this claim that if the president believes that what he is doing for his reelection is in the public interest, then that itself is not impeachable. And so, given that this is still a live issue in the open trial,
I didn't make that argument.
Well, okay,
so let me be very clear.
Well, let me play for your reaction. Here's what you said on the Senate floor. Take a look.
If a president does something which he believes will help him get elected in the public interest, that cannot be the kind of quid pro quo that results in impeachment.
So my question to you would be then, if a president tries to get a rival arrested because he believes that that will make him unavailable to campaign and help his reelection, is that then unimpeachable because of his belief?
Of course it is. Of course it is. It's a crime to get somebody arrested improperly for the wrong reason. Let me make it clear. I began my argument by saying I supported the impeachment of Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon, whatever he did, he thought he did in the public interest, and he did it to get himself elected. Of course he was impeachable. The point I was making is that the president can't do anything illegal. He can't do anything that would be impeachable. But if he does something absolutely proper, and the purpose is a mixed purpose, part of it is to get himself elected, that the fact that he had a mixed motive can't turn innocent conduct into guilty conduct. I gave an example, which has not been quoted in the media. Abraham Lincoln
I would point out, I just have to point out, and then I'll let you finish, sir. You cannot complain about not being quoted in the media when you're getting time here for the purpose of quoting you. So please go ahead and tell us, but we could do it without the media criticism. I'm affording you the time.
Days of attack based on a false description of what I said. Abraham Lincoln sent the troops home to Indiana so that they could vote Republican. Obviously, he had mixed motives. He thought it was in the best interest of the country, but he also was trying to help his party. Another example I gave is that what if Barack Obama's decision not to bomb Syria after promising to do so was motivated in part by people telling him the left would be strongly objecting if he did that. You cannot psychoanalyze a president and try to parse what his motives are or what his motives are not. That's the only point I was making. I made it in response to the arguments made by the managers that even if a slight component of the president's decision to act was to help himself get reelected, doesn't matter whether the rest of it was in the public interest.
Let's take that seriously,
if he was motivated,
Professor,
even in part by a desire to get reelected,
let's take that
would
seriously,
be impeachable.
because Professor,
that's what I was responding
so
to.
So you say that that is the distinction you want to make about the claim you asserted on the Senate floor. Others have reacted to it. We've shown that. My question to you then would be, you are the one invoking the principles of criminal law and arguing that criminal standard should apply. You use the terms beyond a reasonable doubt should apply. Right. That's not typically how Senate impeachments have run in the past. You also say then criminal law guides. But as you know, and I think our viewers know, because we've all been refreshing our law school together through the trial and the coverage, criminal law is all about the mental state. So how can you at once say they should use more criminal law?
Intent.
Yes, intent, your mental intent. So if the intent is to knock out your opponent, so that you have an easier path to re-election. That's your intent. The fact that you also may think it is or isn't good for cleaning up a random company in Ukraine doesn't salvage you, does it?
No, let me be very clear. Every presidential candidate tries to knock out his opponent. That's why they have people gathering dirt on their opponent. There's nothing wrong. There's something maybe morally wrong, but nothing legally or impeachably wrong with people who try to gather dirt. The question is it part of a quid pro quo? And that's the question that I was responding to. And the point I was making is if the action itself is legal, the managers are wrong when they say that even if one part of the component of what your motive was to get yourself reelected, that alone cannot be enough to turn something legal into an illegal quid pro quo.
Now, hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.